Hey, it's Sarah again. Welcome back. So in the second part of this video, we skipped ahead a little bit. So be sure to check out the link in the description if you want to see a little bit more of coding that Steven does. He adds a little bit more code to the project he's working on with the inspect. Pretty fun, so you can check that out. But meanwhile, we're going to move on, and he's going to tell us to get some paper. We mean it. Get some paper. Really try it. So what he does, he's going to demonstrate something, and I want us to follow along. I'm going to follow along. You should too. Pause this video if you don't have pen and paper on you and go get it. It can be a pencil, can be a crayon, whatever you have lying around, markers, it's all good. But do follow along. He's going to demonstrate a type of note-taking that's kind of new. You should copy what he does at the very least. But if as you're watching the video again, because it's going to get really meta, we're going to watch the video inside the video. As we're watching it again, feel free to deviate. If you don't want to write down exactly what he writes down because you have a different thought, a different idea, do it. We're going to talk a little bit more about this after we practice it. All right, so I'm going to hop over to here, giant cat on the screen. I'm actually going to make myself go away. I'm going to work on my notes. But that way you can see the entire screen and see everything that Steven's doing. All right, here we go. Really do it. Get your paper. Let's go.
If you've spent any time trying to learn how to code, you've probably used Scratch, or at least seen it. I'm going to spend just a few minutes on Scratch before I break it. This is the cat. That's the default cat. You can make the cat move if you have a move instruction. I'm just clicking that move instruction to make the cat move. Easy peasy. I can make it rotate as well. Okay, very nice. Move or rotate, either one, doesn't really matter. By the way, do not commit this to memory. Do not write it down. We're not going to use any of this after a few minutes from now. Here's a loop. Here's a loop. Here's a loop. If I put the rotate instruction inside there, it does it 10 times. And so it has kind of an animation. I could make it 100 times, or 1,000 if I wanted. And now he'll spin for even longer. If I click this one while it's going, they kind of double up, so it spins faster. It can be a lot of fun. This is a nice sandbox, but I want to point out that it is a sandbox. In this video series, I'm going to be teaching you how to think outside of the boxes that people try to place you in. I'm going to steal this tiny bit of code from this other educational page about how to use CSS transformations, and I'm just gonna find one little piece of this page, the place where I write the code, and then basically I'm going to change the code for that. So now it's rotated. I wonder if I could make it spin in an animated way with JavaScript. Well, here's a post about making something spin. I'm able to find the part of this that I want, and I am going to copy it, and I'm going to go over here and paste it. Notice it gives a warning that tells me that if I'm not a developer, I shouldn't be here, and that's true. That's the sign that you're leaving the sandbox. But I'm a coder, and I'm allowed to walk out of any sandbox I want. And to be perfectly honest, so are you. You don't have to stay in any educational box that somebody puts you in. I'm just going to find the part of the page that I want, and I'm going to give it a name. Naming things allows us to affect them with code. And right now I'm giving it the name Bob. So now I'm just writing a line of code that finds Bob, which is actually a part of the page, and I'm making Bob spin. So the part of the page where you write the code to make the cat spin is something that I just made spin by moving outside of that sandbox and using a more powerful tool. I wonder if I could get the cat to spin while the code that's making it spin is also spinning due to other code that makes it spin. Let's try. Now the cat is spinning, and I'm going to rerun this code, and yeah, everything is spinning. The cat and the code making the cat spin both are spinning.
All right, I'm back. How was that? What did you create? Because this is what I've got over here. I've got my little picture here. You can see it. Some of it looks a little bit like what Stephen created. Some of it didn't. I'm going to go ahead over here and actually find a spot that shows what he created over here. Yeah. So you can see some of it's the same, some of it's different. So what is this? Let's take a minute to talk about what this is. This is something called visual note taking. Very different than the typical notes. You might take, they might look a little bit closer to something like, maybe I have some notes that look a little bit more traditional in here. It's got very organized bullets, super pretty, the kind of thing that teachers like to see in their class. I don't have any examples here, but I'm sure you've seen it before. It's something with order, something all words, no pictures, everything's linear. The thing with visual note taking is that it works a little bit more like our brains tend to work. Our brains are not super linear. So the benefits of this kind of note taking, as opposed to something that's a little bit more traditional, is this: by breaking us out of that box of going 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the points, we can pull out what we think is important. It takes some practice to just hook into what you think you need to see. You can also see some drawings. There's some resources we can take a look at later that'll be linked down here on how to add drawings to your notes to really shorthand stuff and make it faster for you. But instead of just transcribing what the video says word for word, like right over here, I don't know if you can see, but right over here I wrote name and I wrote arrow, affect with code. Rather than writing, when we name things, we affect it with code. I use a little arrow and I use keywords to get that idea down. And rather than transcribing what he said, I have to translate it into my own language, and it gets a greater understanding. So that's one benefit. By doing this, you start learning how you need to take notes. As I said before, it's not what you're going to start writing down the things that you think you need to remember. And you're going to start learning about what you need to know and what you do already know that you don't need to take notes on. Maybe Stephen wrote down a question about if there's a limit to how many rotates you can do and to ask Scratch. Maybe that's something I already know and I don't need to write it down, or it doesn't interest me, so I don't need to write it down. But what I did write down is this inspect, because I was curious about it. I wrote down over here, how does he know what to copy? I was curious about that. That's not something he wrote down, that's something I did write down. So I get to know the things, what I need to know and what I already know. Now this is a word this brings us to a word called metacognition. Metacognition, what that means is thinking about thinking. Thinking about your own brain. What's it going on? Not just learning and absorbing, but learning and thinking, how am I learning this? How do I learn it better? What do I know? What do I not know? And these are the things that make us better learners. Whether you're learning in school, whether you're learning something for a hobby, whether you're working on your sport, anything that helps you become a better learner. You can do it better if you know something about it, right? And when you do these sort of things, it brings you to questions, and you can drive towards your own learning, towards things that are curious, things that make you curious, things that you want to know more about. It opens up space for that as well. Now, this isn't easy. One thing that's challenging is it feels like, how do I know if it's something I'm supposed to write down? In this case, we copied what Stephen was drawing and what Stephen was writing. But when we do it on our own, how do we know what we're supposed to write down? You're going to get a little voice in your head that says, is this important? Should I be writing this down? Am I missing something? Just keep practicing. This is something that takes some practice. Just don't restrain yourself to linear notes, and be creative with space, be creative with drawing, and practice it several times. Some of the important things you can do is don't get caught. Try to, whenever that voice pops up and says, is this important? Wait, I wrote that down wrong, or that's not as pretty as a drawing as I wanted it to be, or it wasn't as cool, or there's more I want. You're distracting yourself from what you should be paying attention to, which is the content. So just keep steering yourself back to, okay, I'll get back to that later, or that, all right, I started scribbling that, let me move on. What's he saying now? What's he saying now? What's in this next part of the video, right? So that's a challenge. So just commit to trying this. I really, really want you to. Don't just do it once. Don't just try it twice and then say, well, that was hard, I'm going to give up. It takes some practice. So commit to doing it for a little bit of a while. I've been doing it. I really encourage you to as well. So yeah, remember metacognition. You're going to think about how you think. Learn about how you learn. Be creative. Don't just learn the way somebody else told you. Don't stay inside that box, but go ahead and break out of it. So if you're watching this on YouTube, that's the end of it. If you are on Udemy, you've got some assignments to work on metacognition, to work on some of this visual note-taking, to even work on some of the code stuff we did before. So get cracking on that, and we'll see you in the next video. See ya.